Hello and welcome to this little corner of the internet. Today I just want to show you guys my process of making myself a Christmas dress with a tablecloth that I found at the thrift store. I've really wanted a tartan, like red and green, Christmas dress for a few years now, but they're always really pricey on those vintage reproduction sites. So when I found this tablecloth, I thought it was the perfect thing to try making my own with. So let's just get into it. So here's the tablecloth in question, which cost me a whopping $4. I decided to use this pattern, which I also got at the thrift store, since I wanted a relatively simple and classic silhouette. I've never actually used a pattern before, so a big chunk of time was spent figuring out how the heck to read the darn thing and cutting out the pattern pieces I needed. Where's 9 and 10? There's no 9 and 10. Yeah, whoever had this pattern before me either kept or threw away the pattern for the back of the bodice, so I had to take a guess at drafting my own. Thankfully, I only paid 25 cents for this pattern. Once I had the pattern sorted, I pinned it to the fabric and started cutting out the pieces. I ended up not trimming the pattern down to the lines for my size, just in case I ever want to make this dress in a larger size, but that did make cutting out the fabric more difficult. I used an old bedsheet for the lining fabric that would go inside the bodice. Once everything was cut out, I started attaching the bodice pieces. I started with a straight stitch for each seam, then reinforced it with a parallel zigzag stitch because this fabric frayed like crazy at the edges. Probably because it was a cheap tablecloth material, but seriously, there are red and green threads everywhere around this apartment now. The front seemed to fit pretty well, but there was way too much fabric at the back where I had to guess at the pattern shape, but I figured I could trim away the excess fabric later on. To start assembling the skirt, I sewed together the two back panels, leaving the top third of the seam open where the zipper would go later. I then attached the front half of the pockets, made out of the lining, to the front panel of the skirt, making them flush with the top and sides of the fabric, and attached the back half of the pockets to the back panel of the skirt in the same way. I then sewed the front and back skirt panels together along the side seams, keeping the sides open at the pockets, and sewed the pocket halves together. It is Christmas Eve, and I still haven't finished this dress. It should not be that long of a process in and of itself, but I got distracted decorating for Christmas and doing all the gift stuff and just, yeah. Quick montage of everything else I've been working on. I just want to finish this today. The next step was to gather the top of the skirt. I made 2 parallel stitches on the longest setting along the top of the skirt, then spent the first half of 500 Days of Summer pulling on those threads to bunch up the fabric. This was probably my least favorite part of this project, although that may be partly due to how tough this fabric was to gather. Actually, I take that back. Getting the gathered skirt to line up with the bodice so that it was not only the right measurement, but also so that the side seams lined up was my least favorite part. Eventually, I did get the skirt and bodice lined up well enough, and this tablecloth was finally starting to resemble a dress. To attach the zipper up the back, I started by trimming off some of the excess fabric on the back of the bodice, then basted the opening closed by hand with a contrasting thread. I then basted the zipper to the inside of the dress, lined up with the back opening before top stitching it in place and removing the basting stitches. To create the lining, I just attached the pieces the same way I did with the bodice, then folded in the bottom edge. I pinned the lining to the bodice right sides together and top stitched along the neck and armholes, leaving an opening at the top of the straps. This allowed for the lining to be flipped to the inside of the dress where the wrong sides of the fabric were now together. Also, this was not in the pattern, but I did end up stitching the bottom of the lining to the dress right along the seam where the bodice meets the skirt. I did this just because I didn't want that part hanging open. To connect the straps, I folded open the tops of the front and back strap and pinned the right sides together, lining pinned to lining and plaid pinned to plaid. I sewed a straight stitch across the top edge so that when it was flipped back to right sides out, it should look like this. Honestly, this part is kind of hard to explain, and the diagram in the pattern wasn't any clearer. I then just had to fold in the rough edges and close up the hole on each strap. Lastly, I pressed and top stitched around the neck and armholes to keep the lining flat against the bodice, and folded a narrow hem around the bottom of the skirt. Freaking cold. She is finished. Yeah, cool. Overall, I'm pretty pleased with how it turned out. I do still need to clean up some of the seams inside, tweak a few things by hand. My main complaint is just this lining. I don't love this color. I really wish I would have bought some black fabric. I think that would look a lot sleeker. I mean, it's an unoffensive neutral color, but I feel like it's kind of dorky looking. I don't know. This part does not entirely lay flat, and I don't know how to fix that. I had the same issue with my bell dress. I just... help. And then the zipper is a little bit wonky, probably because it was salvaged from something else. But overall, I'm pretty happy with it. I finally have a Christmas dress, and not... I guess this could kind of be a Christmas dress, but this feels very casual to me, so I finally have a fancy Christmas dress that cost me $4. Maybe in a couple years I'll find a better fabric and get some black fabric to make a lining and try this again and see, you know, how I improve over the years. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. I know it's definitely after Christmas by the time I post this, but I hope you guys did have a wonderful Christmas, Hanukkah, whatever you celebrate. If you watched all the way to the end, here are 10 fake internet points for you. Leave a like or a comment if you feel so inclined. Follow me on Instagram to see other stuff that I make, like these stockings that I'm very proud of. But thanks again for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. That I found at the thrift store. For my lack of pronunciation, you would never guess that I'm a theater kid.